The bitter February wind cut through my jacket as I stepped onto my back porch, camera bag slung over my shoulder. I'd been a wildlife photographer for 20 years, but moments like these still took my breath away, not from beauty, but from heartbreak. There, huddled against my kitchen door, was the smallest fox kit I'd ever seen. His russet fur was matted with snow, and his tiny body shook uncontrollably. Those amber eyes, usually bright with wild intelligence, were dull with exhaustion and fear. My heart clenched. In all my years documenting wildlife, I'd learned the hard rule: observe, don't interfere. But this wasn't the wilderness. This was my backyard, and this little one was clearly dying. I knelt slowly, speaking in soft tones. "Hey there, little guy. What are you doing so far from home?" The kid didn't run. That alone told me how desperate his situation was. Healthy foxes, even young ones, bolt at the first sign of humans. His breathing was shallow, labored. Hypothermia was setting in. I had minutes, maybe less, before it would be too late. My hands trembled as I reached for him, not from cold, but from the weight of responsibility. Once I touched him, there would be no going back. The kid's eyes met mine, and in that moment, I saw something that shattered my professional resolve completely. It wasn't just fear or pain, it was hope. This tiny creature, abandoned and freezing, was still fighting to live. Without another thought, I gently scooped him into my arms, feeling his rapid heartbeat against my chest. "You're safe now," I whispered, carrying him inside toward warmth, toward life, toward a journey neither of us could have imagined. Inside my kitchen, the contrast was startling. The warmth hit us both immediately, and I felt the kit's shivering intensify. A good sign, actually. His body was trying to rewarm itself. I grabbed the softest towel I could find and created a nest near the heating vent. "Okay, little one, let's see what we're dealing with," I murmured, gently examining him. He was younger than I'd initially thought, maybe 6 weeks old, barely weaned. His eyes tracked my movements, alert despite his condition. I'd rescued wildlife before, but always with the intention of immediate transfer to licensed rehabilitators. This time felt different. The nearest wildlife center was 3 hours away, and with the blizzard warning, roads would be impassable until morning. First priority, hydration. I mixed a small amount of electrolyte solution, warming it to body temperature. Using a syringe, I offered tiny drops. To my relief, he accepted them eagerly. His survival instincts were strong. As I worked, I noticed something odd. This kit was unusually calm for a wild animal. Most foxes, even injured ones, would be frantic with fear. But he seemed to understand I was helping. When I gently cleaned the ice from his fur, he actually leaned into my touch. "Where's your family, sweetheart?" I asked softly. Fox kids this young should never be alone. Something had gone terribly wrong. I set up a makeshift den using a large cardboard box lined with fleece blankets. The kit curled into the warmest corner, those amber eyes never leaving my face. There was intelligence there, and something else, a connection I couldn't explain. As night fell, I made a decision that would change everything. I pulled a chair beside his box and settled in for the long watch ahead. Whatever had brought him to my door, I wouldn't abandon him now. Sleep was impossible. Every few minutes, I checked his breathing, offered water, adjusted his blankets. The kid, I'd started calling him Rusty for his beautiful red coat, seemed to appreciate the constant attention. Whenever I moved away, those amber eyes would follow me with an almost human-like concern. Around midnight, his condition worsened. His breathing became rapid and shallow again. panic seized me. I'd seen this before, the body's last attempt to fight hypothermia before shutting down. "No, no, no," I whispered, gently lifting him. His tiny body felt so fragile in my hands. Without thinking, I unzipped my fleece jacket and tucked him against my chest, skin to skin. It was risky. Wild animals could bite or scratch when frightened, but I had to try. The effect was immediate. His breathing steadied and the violent shivering subsided. I could feel his tiny heartbeat synchronizing with mine. For the next 3 hours, we stayed like that, two beings sharing warmth and life force. As dawn approached, something magical happened. Rusty began to purr, a soft, rumbling sound I'd never heard from a fox before. I later learned that fox kids do vocalize contentment, but in that moment, it felt like a miracle. "You're going to make it, aren't you?" I whispered. His response was to nuzzle deeper into my warmth. By sunrise, his eyes were brighter, more alert. When I offered him diluted puppy formula, he drank eagerly. Color was returning to his nose and paw pads. We'd made it through the critical first night, but as I watched him explore his box with newfound energy, a troubling question nagged at me. Where was his family? And why did this wild kid seem so comfortable with human contact? The answers, I would soon discover, would break my heart completely. Over the next few days, Rusty transformed before my eyes. His appetite returned with a vengeance. He demanded feeding every 2 hours, just like a domestic puppy. I researched fox kit nutrition obsessively, adjusting his formula to match what he'd received from his mother. The roads remained impassable, giving me time to bond with my unexpected guest. Rusty had claimed the sunny corner of my kitchen as his territory, but he preferred being near me. When I worked at my computer, editing photos, he'd curl up on a blanket at my feet. His personality emerged gradually. He was curious about everything, investigating every sound, smell, and shadow. But unlike typical wild foxes, he showed no fear of human objects. He played with my camera strap like a toy and seemed fascinated by the clicking of my keyboard. "You're different, aren't you?" I observed one morning as he confidently explored my living room. Most rescued wildlife remained skittish, ready to bolt at any sudden movement. Rusty acted like he belonged here. I started documenting his recovery with my camera. Each photo told a story of resilience and trust. There was the image of him taking his first confident steps across the kitchen floor. Another captured him mid-yawn, tiny pink tongue visible. But my favorite showed him looking directly into the lens, those amber eyes holding an almost human intelligence. The breakthrough came on day 4. I was preparing his formula when I heard a soft sound behind me. Turning, I found Rusty had climbed out of his box and was sitting patiently, waiting for breakfast. No fear, no hiding, just trust. "Good morning to you too," I laughed, kneeling to his level. He approached without hesitation, allowing me to stroke his now fluffy coat. In that moment, I realized this wasn't just rescue anymore. This was the beginning of something extraordinary. The knock on my door came just as I was giving Rusty his morning feeding. Through the window, I saw 2 figures in uniform, local animal control officers. My heart sank. Someone must have reported seeing a fox around my property. "Good morning, ma'am. I'm Officer Martinez. This is Officer Chen. We received reports of a fox in this area. Have you seen anything unusual?" I hesitated. Legally, I knew I should report Rusty immediately, but something in my gut told me to be cautious. "What kind of reports?" I asked. Officer Chen consulted her notepad. "A neighbor mentioned seeing fox tracks near your property. We're investigating because there was an incident at the Foxhaven Sanctuary about a week ago. Several animals escaped during a break-in, including some young kids. My blood ran cold. Fox Haven Sanctuary. I knew it well. It was a controversial facility that had faced criticism for its conditions. If Rusty had escaped from there, it explained so much. His comfort with humans, his lack of wild instincts, his trusting nature. What kind of incident? I managed to ask. Vandalism mostly. Someone broke the enclosure locks. The owner claims it was animal rights activists, but Officer Martinez shrugged. Let's just say we've had complaints about that place before. Behind me, I heard a soft chittering sound. Rusty was awake and looking for me. The officers' heads turned toward the sound. Is that a cat? Officer Chen asked. Yes, I lied smoothly. She's recovering from surgery. Very vocal about meal times. They accepted this explanation, but I could see suspicion in their eyes. After they left, I sat heavily in my kitchen chair, Rusty climbing into my lap as if sensing my distress. Oh, sweetheart, I whispered, stroking his soft fur. What happened to you before you found me? That evening, I couldn't shake the officer's words. Fox Haven Sanctuary. I'd photographed there once, years ago, and left feeling deeply unsettled. The enclosures were too small, the animals seemed stressed, and the owner, Marcus Webb, had been more interested in profit than proper care. I pulled up local news articles on my laptop. Rusty curled against my side as if he belonged there. What I found made my stomach turn. Multiple complaints over the years, inadequate veterinary care, overcrowding, animals showing signs of psychological distress. But Webb had connections, money, and somehow always avoided serious consequences. Then I found it, a small article from 8 days ago. Break-in at local fox sanctuary results in animal escapes. The piece was brief, almost dismissive. Webb claimed activists had destroyed property and released several animals into the wild during a snowstorm. He estimated 5 foxes had escaped, including several valuable breeding females and their offspring. Valuable breeding females. The phrase made me sick. These weren't pets or livestock. They were wild animals being exploited for profit. I looked down at Rusty, who was watching me with those intelligent amber eyes. Is that where you came from, baby? Were you born in a cage? As if in response, he climbed higher on my chest and touched his tiny nose to my chin, a gesture so trusting, so affectionate it brought tears to my eyes. This little fox had never known true wilderness, never learned proper fear of humans. He'd been born into captivity, raised as a commodity. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Rusty hadn't just been cold and hungry when I found him. He'd been lost in a world he was never taught to navigate. His own mother might have died trying to protect him during their escape. I'm so sorry, I whispered, holding him close. But you're safe now. I promise you're safe. The next morning brought another visitor, Dr. Sarah Kim, the veterinarian I'd called for advice. I'd known Sarah for years through my wildlife photography work, and I trusted her completely. She arrived with a small medical kit and a gentle smile. So this is the little guy causing all the fuss, she said softly, kneeling beside Rusty's box. To my amazement, he didn't hide. Instead, he approached her with the same trusting curiosity he showed me. Dr. Kim's examination was thorough but gentle. She checked his teeth, felt his bones, listened to his heart and lungs. He's in excellent condition now, she reported. You've done an amazing job nursing him back to health. But Sarah, she paused, meeting my eyes. We need to talk about what happens next. I knew this conversation was coming, but I wasn't prepared for how much it would hurt. He can't be released, can he? Not safely, no. This kid has been hand-raised from birth. He has no fear response, no hunting instincts, no knowledge of natural fox behavior. In the wild, he'd be dead within days. The words hit me like stones. So, what are the options? Legally, he should go to a licensed wildlife facility. But given what you've told me about Fox Haven, she shook her head. There are other sanctuaries, but most are overcrowded. And honestly, after what he's been through, another institutional setting might be traumatic. I watched Rusty playing with a small toy I'd given him, completely content and trusting. The thought of putting him in another cage, even a better one, made my chest tight. There is another option, Dr. Kim said quietly. Educational permits. Some states allow private citizens to keep non-releasable wildlife for educational purposes. It's a long process, lots of requirements, but he could stay here. If you're willing to commit to a lifetime of specialized care, yes. But Sarah, this isn't a pet. This is a 15-year commitment to a wild animal with specific needs. That night, I sat in my kitchen watching Rusty sleep, Dr. Kim's words echoing in my mind. 15 years, a lifetime commitment. Was I really prepared for that? I thought about my life, my work as a wildlife photographer, my small rural home, my solitary routine. Adding a fox to that equation would change everything. No more spontaneous travel assignments, no more quiet evenings without responsibility. Every day would revolve around his needs. But then I looked at him, curled in his favorite blanket, one tiny paw twitching as he dreamed. In just 1 week, he'd become part of my world. The kitchen felt empty when he napped in other rooms. I'd started timing my meals around his feeding schedule without even thinking about it. "What do you think, Rusty?" I whispered. "Want to stay here with me?" As if hearing his name, he opened one amber eye and made a soft chirping sound, his version of a sleepy greeting. Then he stretched, climbed out of his box, and padded over to where I sat. Without hesitation, he climbed into my lap and settled down with a contented sigh. The decision made itself. The next morning, I called Dr. Kim. "I want to apply for the educational permit." "Are you sure? It's a huge responsibility." "I'm sure. He belongs here." The paperwork was daunting. Background checks, facility inspections, detailed care plans, insurance requirements. I had to prove I could provide proper nutrition, veterinary care, enrichment activities, and educational value to the community. But with each form I filled out, each requirement I met, I felt more certain. This wasn't just about saving Rusty anymore. It was about giving him the life he deserved, not in a cage, not as a commodity, but as a valued individual with his own personality and needs. 3 months later, the permit arrived in the mail. With the permit approved, I could finally breathe freely. Rusty was legally mine to care for, and I was legally his to protect. The relief was overwhelming, but the real work was just beginning. I transformed my backyard into a fox paradise. A large, secure enclosure gave him outdoor space to explore safely, complete with logs to climb, tunnels to investigate, and a small pond for drinking and playing. Inside the house, I fox-proofed everything, securing cabinets, removing toxic plants, and creating safe spaces where he could retreat when overwhelmed. Rusty adapted to our routine beautifully. Mornings began with breakfast and outdoor time. He'd patrol his territory, marking favorite spots and investigating any changes since the previous day. His intelligence constantly amazed me. He learned to open simple latches, recognize the sound of my car from blocks away, and even seemed to understand basic words. Breakfast, outside, and bedtime became part of his vocabulary. But his favorite word was his own name. Whenever I called Rusty, he'd come running, chattering excitedly as if he had important news to share. The educational component of our arrangement began with local school visits. I'd bring photos and videos of Rusty, explaining fox behavior, habitat needs, and the importance of wildlife conservation. The children were fascinated, asking thoughtful questions about his diet, his sleeping habits, and whether he missed being wild. That last question always gave me pause. Did he miss something he'd never really known? I watched him carefully for signs of distress or longing, but saw only contentment. He'd created his own version of wildness within the safety of our shared life. One evening, as he curled up beside me while I edited photos, I realized something profound. We hadn't just saved each other, we'd created something entirely new. A partnership between species, built on trust, respect, and love. Spring brought new challenges and joys. Rusty's first full season outdoors revealed instincts I hadn't expected. He began caching food, hiding treats around his enclosure for later discovery. He showed intense interest in bird sounds and spent hours watching squirrels with predatory focus, though he never had the opportunity to hunt. I consulted with wildlife behaviorists to ensure I was meeting his psychological needs. They recommended puzzle feeders, scent enrichment, and varied textures to stimulate his natural curiosity. Watching him solve a complex food puzzle designed for zoo animals filled me with pride. His intelligence was remarkable. Our educational programs expanded. Local nature centers invited us for demonstrations, and I began writing articles about fox behavior and rehabilitation ethics. Rusty became something of a local celebrity, though I was careful to maintain boundaries. He wasn't a performer. He was a wild animal deserving respect. The most touching moment came during a visit to a children's hospital. I'd brought videos and photos, not Rusty himself, but one little girl asked if she could send him a drawing. Soon, colorful pictures of foxes covered my refrigerator, gifts from children who'd been inspired by his story. Summer brought its own revelations. Rusty's coat changed dramatically, becoming lighter and less dense. He developed a passion for digging, creating elaborate tunnel systems in his outdoor enclosure. I added sandboxes and buried toys for him to discover, watching him exhibit natural behaviors I'd only read about in textbooks. But the most significant change was in our relationship. What had begun as rescue and rehabilitation had evolved into genuine companionship. Rusty had learned to read my moods, offering comfort when I was stressed and sharing excitement when I was happy. In return, I'd learned his language, the subtle ear positions that indicated curiosity, the specific vocalizations that meant hunger versus loneliness versus contentment. Not everything was perfect in our unusual partnership. Late summer brought Rusty's first serious health scare. I noticed him moving stiffly one morning, favoring his left front paw. Dr. Kim's examination revealed a small fracture, likely from an overly enthusiastic leap in his enclosure. The next 6 weeks tested both of us. Rusty had to be confined to a smaller space while his paw healed, and he was not happy about it. He became restless, vocal, and occasionally destructive. I spent hours each day providing extra enrichment and attention, but nothing fully compensated for his lost freedom. This is the reality of caring for a wild animal, Dr. Kim reminded me during one of our weekly checkups. They don't understand medical necessity the way we do. To him, you're just restricting his movement for no reason. I felt guilty and frustrated. Had I made the right choice keeping him? Would he be happier in a larger facility with other foxes? The doubts crept in during sleepless nights when his restless pacing kept us both awake. But then came the breakthrough. One evening, instead of trying to entertain him, I simply sat quietly in his recovery area with a book. After a few minutes, Rusty approached and settled against my leg. We stayed like that for an hour, him resting, me reading, both of us finding peace in simple companionship. From that night forward, our evening routine included quiet time together. I realized I'd been so focused on keeping him stimulated that I'd forgotten the value of calm presence. Sometimes the best thing I could offer wasn't activities or toys, but simply being there. When his paw finally healed and he returned to his full enclosure, his joy was infectious. He raced around, leaping and spinning with pure exuberance, but that night, he still chose to spend his quiet time beside me. As autumn arrived, marking nearly a year since Rusty had appeared at my door, I reflected on our incredible journey. The frightened, half-frozen kid had grown into a magnificent adult fox with a glossy red coat and bright, intelligent eyes. More importantly, he'd found his place in a world that hadn't been designed for him. Our educational programs had reached hundreds of children and adults, spreading awareness about wildlife conservation and the complex ethics of human-animal relationships. Rusty's story had been featured in several wildlife magazines, always with the careful message that wild animals belong in the wild. But sometimes, life creates exceptions that require compassion and commitment. The anniversary of his rescue day felt significant. I prepared a special meal for him, his favorite foods arranged in a puzzle feeder I'd designed myself. As he worked to extract each treat, I marveled at how far we'd both come. I'd learned patience, dedication, and the profound responsibility that comes with caring for a wild soul. My photography had evolved too, influenced by daily observation of Rusty's behavior and expressions. I could now capture wildlife images with deeper understanding of animal psychology and emotion. But perhaps the most important lesson was about love itself. What I felt for Rusty wasn't the same as love for a pet. It was respect, responsibility, and deep affection combined with recognition of his wild nature. He would never be domesticated, never be truly mine in the way a dog or cat might be. He was himself completely and beautifully fox, choosing to share his life with me. That evening, as we settled into our quiet time routine, Rusty did something new. Instead of simply resting against me, he climbed into my lap and touched his nose to my cheek, a gesture of pure affection and trust. "Thank you," I whispered, "for choosing me too." 2 years have passed since that snowy February morning when a tiny fox kit changed my life forever. As I write this, Rusty is napping in a patch of afternoon sunlight, his red coat gleaming like burnished copper. He's grown into a magnificent fox, alert, healthy, and content in ways I never dared hope for during those first desperate hours. Our life together has settled into a rhythm that feels as natural as breathing. Morning greetings, shared meals, outdoor adventures in his enclosure, educational visits to schools and nature centers, and quiet evenings when he curls beside me while I work. He's taught me that family isn't always about species. It's about commitment, understanding, and unconditional care. The investigation into Fox Haven Sanctuary finally concluded last month. Marcus Webb lost his license and faced criminal charges for animal cruelty. The remaining foxes were relocated to reputable facilities. I testified about Rusty's condition when I found him, and the judge commended our rehabilitation partnership as An example of what's possible when human compassion meets wild resilience. But beyond the legal victories and educational successes, what matters most is simpler. Rusty is home. Not in the wilderness he was never taught to navigate, not in a cage where he'd be just another number, but here, where he's known and loved as an individual. People often ask if I regret the commitment, the restrictions on my freedom, the constant responsibility. The answer is always no. Rusty didn't just survive that frozen night, he thrived. And in helping him flourish, I discovered parts of myself I never knew existed. As he stretches and opens one amber eye to check on me, I'm reminded of the profound truth his presence has taught me. Sometimes the greatest adventures don't take us far from home. Sometimes they bring the wild world to our doorstep, asking only for compassion, patience, and love.